to send you this recording in case you have friends or others who want to hear this after the fact. So today we're going to talk about appeals in the time of COVID-19. We know that this can be an anxious time of year anyway, trying to make a college decision, and it is just even more so with everything that's going on. And we just want you to know that we are really thinking about you and want to offer you as much information as possible. Let me just show you a couple of things. About what MIFA has to offer you at this time. Please know that you can always come to our website. There's a wealth of information there about making this college decision. You can call us, you can email us, and in fact, you can also make a one-on-one appointment with us if that is useful for you. So we want to let you know that these resources are there to help you, and we're here, and we're using technology as we can to assist you with this process. Today we're going to talk about general campus updates as a result of COVID-19, and especially about appeals and what college campuses are seeing with appeals and how you could make an appeal if you're having financial difficulties. We'll also talk about tips and best practices for these appeals and any larger trends, and then we will answer your questions. My estimate is that we'll share some information for about half an hour, and then we will open it up for your questions, and I will monitor that. And I am just thrilled that in these difficult times that we have a panel that is these fabulous colleagues. We have Iris Scodes from Dean College, Kevin DeRusi from Salem State University, Melissa Metcalf from Boston College, and Gail Holt from Amherst College. And these are longtime experts in the field of financial aid, and really will have a lot to share with you about what's happening on campuses and answer your questions about your own situation and appeals. So I guess we'll just get started with a general question, and I'll have you all talk about this on your own campuses. To what are you seeing on your campuses right now that will be helpful to families, and what messages would you want to share with them to open this up? I guess I'll start with you, Gail. You're up in the right-hand corner of my screen.
Thank you, Julie. It's a pleasure to be here. And I'll just start by, every worry that I'm sure all of you parents and counselors have out there, I actually share with you in this moment. I have a 17-year-old who actually just made a decision, and I paid a deposit over the weekend. So I'm right here with you. In terms of the campus, we are all of us are in exceptionally unprecedented times. So this is kind of like learning a new job on the fly. But I can assure you that all of our institutions are approaching it with the utmost concern for our families and for our students. We're in this business because we want to deliver the best education possible. We realize there's many challenges ahead, and right now we're trying to collect as much information as possible to make the best decision. And those decisions are not going to come swiftly, no matter what people want to say in the news. So I think, on our campus, we're looking toward hopefully June, being able to illuminate what we'll be able to put forth. But I think we're just trying to sit with families around the uncertainty and share as much as we can about how best to guide and move forward.
Okay. All right, Kevin, how would you share? What would you share from Salem State?
Pretty much I'd mirror what Gail said. I mean, there's a lot of information that's coming in fast and furious, and as administrators, I mean, we're trying to keep up to speed with regulations and guidelines that are coming from the Department of Education, both the federal and the state side. But we're seeing a lot of parents and students that, this is new to everyone and they're having a hard time. There's a lot of uncertainty, and our main goal and objective right now is to just let parents and students know that, we are working to provide the best service we can, and to kind of come up with policies and processes that aren't going to hinder you in your attempt or your need to readdress your financial aid or your finances. And we're out here working for you. So
Thank you. And Iris.
So hello everyone, and those of you that are parents. If I look like I'm coming from a dorm room, I'm in my daughter's room that has kind of turned into her dorm room. She's actually graduating this year. So for those of you with seniors, I am sharing the lack of commencement sadness and all the things that come with the end of a career. In my case, college, and in many of your cases, perhaps high school, but definitely relate. And again, ditto to my colleagues, Gail and Kevin as well. Everybody's working hard. We haven't skipped a beat, even though we're all working from home. The term on campus has a whole different meaning now in these crazy times. But honestly, thank God for technology, and we haven't skipped a beat. We have all of our meetings through one online platform or another. We've all learned more about technology than I think we ever thought we would need to learn beyond the financial aid world, and how to communicate. And I think there's things that will continue after this time that will improve our services in many respects, particularly for those that live a distance away. In terms of the situation that we're in now, same at Dean, it's very uncertain. I know we're going to get a little bit deeper into the questions, so I won't get too deep into it right now. But we're working with families very closely and assuring everybody that we'll work with them the best we can to try to make it work.
And what would you add, Melissa?
Hi, thanks for having us. I don't really have much else to add that the other three haven't already mentioned, but I will say things are changing very quickly. They're changing overnight. Like for you, we are experiencing decisions being made based on federal regulation or state guidelines. Like Gail said, none of these decisions can really be made quickly because there's a lot of thought that needs to go into the impact of all these decisions that are going to have on each family and each student. So we are working as quickly as possible. We're really trying to work with each family individually. We're all working from home from our living rooms. We all have kids in the same boat, or most of us do, and we're in it with you. So
Can I stop us for one moment? I just want to make sure of this. I think that some people can't hear us. So I just want to stop us for one moment. And my button says people can hear me, but I'm going to ask participants if someone could let me know if you can hear us. Let me see one more time. People can see your screen. I am going to see if I can take the screen down. Hold on one moment and let me ask. Participants, let us know if you can hear and see our screen. You know what? Let's say that was dress rehearsal. Welcome, everyone. Hello, and thank you for joining our webinar. Please let me know if you can hear and see our screen. And I am going to put the slideshow up now. So thank you for joining our webinar this afternoon on financial aid appeals. And we just want you to know that during this extremely difficult time, we know there's a lot of worry out there. You have a big college decision to make, and NEFA is here, and we want to help you in many different ways. So we want you to know that you can call us or email us. You can go to our website, and we are putting out new content all the time. One thing I will ask is if everyone could mute yourselves. I'm going to try to do that as well. Great. And thank you. It seems like everyone can hear me. And so we're here to help you during this process. Today, we're going to talk about appeals. We're going to get some general campus updates and get a breakdown of the appeal process from some great experts who are working in financial aid on campuses. And they will talk about any tips and best practices for families considering an appeal. The experts we have with us today are 4 long-term colleagues who will have a lot to share. We have Iris Godes from Dean College, Kevin DeRusi from Salem State, Melissa Metcalf from Boston College, and Gail Holt from Amherst College. So we're going to get started right now, and I'm going to have them go around and just introduce themselves and say a word about what is happening on their campuses. Gail, let me start with you.
Thank you, Julie. It's great to be here, and you know, our campuses are working feverishly to do what we've always done, which is provide the resources that families need for financial aid, and we're expanding on that to respond to these very unprecedented times. So it's almost like we're managing 2 jobs at once right now, but know that there's a lot happening behind the scenes or in our homes, and we're ready to help guide families just the same as we always have. So we look forward to answering some questions today.
And Kevin.
Yes. Similar at Salem State, you know, it's just we're trying to manage the information that's coming in from our federal and state education leaders, as well as, you know, the institution's administration. We're working with parents and students as best we can. We've actually been doing Zoom meetings and created whole websites and plans. This is unprecedented, and we're kind of starting fresh, but we're here for, you know, the students and for their parents, and to make sure that we can get your kids back on campus as soon as possible and help you in whatever ways we can.
Iris, what would you like to say?
So similar at Dean College, we are entering week 7 of working from home, but who's counting? And we're figuring it out, and we're being quite efficient. We don't feel like we've really skipped a beat, other than the way we're communicating is a little bit different. But thanks to technology, we can still see everybody, and we can have meetings together, and we talk to families more in person like this than we actually have in the past. We're doing more video calls than phone calls. So that's been really nice, getting to know families even better. And so the meetings that we would have had on campus, we can have through Zoom or other sources. And, you know, similar to Gail and Kevin, we're all dealing with the same financial aid challenge with what's happening. We have started reviewing appeals, and I know we're going to get into that a little bit deeper. So I'll turn it over to Melissa to talk about what's happening at BC.
Hi, everyone. At Boston College, we're reacting in the same way my other colleagues are. We're trying to move as quickly and thoughtfully as possible to help families through this. We are all working from home. We are all working as many hours as we were before, and really just trying to help families get through this and plan ahead. Our goal is to get everyone back on campus as quickly as possible, but that's not all of that is within our control. So we're working with families as best we can.
So, of course, we at MIFA have been hearing about lots of situations of job loss, and even if not job loss, just a general uncertainty financially. And families are very nervous. What is normally a huge decision and creates a lot of anxiety financially, making this college decision is just exacerbated in this current environment. So families are asking, if they received a financial aid offer, what if this isn't enough? What if I need more money because of a job loss, because I now am supporting 3 other family members? Can you take people through how you're handling those appeals on your campuses?
Well, I can start. Right now, what we've done at Salem State is we've kind of broken up our appeals into 3 categories: pre-COVID, current COVID, and incoming and fall. Right now, we've shifted our focus to work specifically with students that are currently enrolled and being impacted by COVID in this current semester. So we've not put aside, but we've kind of pushed a little bit to the side incoming and fall appeals, and our primary focus right now is just working on our currently enrolled students who are experiencing financial hardships and difficulties in this current semester to process their appeals as quickly as possible and hopefully be able to, you know, get some additional financial support for them.
Okay, and can I just have a follow-up question, Kevin? Would you say that if there's an incoming student, they should still write an appeal, and you'll hold it, and that will come after you help the current students?
Most definitely. We're still accepting appeals. Every appeal we get, we are responding to the parent and student, letting them know, you know, if it's a current appeal, that they're getting our immediate attention. If it's incoming, that we'll probably start reviewing their appeal in early to mid-May, and hopefully get a response out to them by the end of May. Because we realize, you know, parents and students need to make their decision. Salem State did move its deposit deadline to June. So, you know, we bought an additional month to kind of get through these things so parents and students can make an informed decision.
Thank you. That's great.
Julie, I'll jump into the extreme on the other side because we didn't change our deposit due date. It is May 1st, which happens to be at the end of this week. What that means is that we have been reviewing appeals essentially since the end of March. At this point in time at Amherst, we're seeing about a 22% increase in appeals over the number of appeals that we would have had at this point last year. And that reflects a lot of uncertainty. We're mainly seeing appeals that are concerned about income more than changes in assets, although we realize that that's real too. The families out there may remember that the information that they provided in their initial application was based on 2018 income. So we absolutely, if families are experiencing or have already, as Kevin said, kind of the pre-COVID, if they'd already experienced changes in their income for 2019, that is much easier to review at this point and consider. And we would encourage families to send in 2019 income information. The challenge there is the moving of the tax deadline means that some families don't have their 2019 taxes completed yet. For us, we would highly encourage families to try to push and get those completed so that we can receive that information in complete form. It is much harder for families to estimate, even under these conditions, what 2020 will look like. So we will certainly be happy to review that information, but unfortunately, we need to wait until there's greater certainty about what the final figures look like. And so we will do that at the end of 2020, and then look at what that means in terms of eligibility for the whole year. So we'll still look at a situation retroactively at that time, but it's hard for us to project into the future and make those decisions sooner than that.
Thanks, Gail.
I'll jump in because I feel like I'm in between at Dean College, in between what Gail has to say and what Kevin has to say. We did push out our deposit date, knowing that many of our families needed a little extra time, and not just on where they are financially, but just on where the world is and how comfortable they are sending their children to which type of school and how far away and all of that. And so we wanted to give our families the benefit of spending some time having some good thoughts on that and hoping that things will be a little better by June, or at least we'll know more by June. In terms of appeals for loss of income, I'll tackle that because that is the most difficult right now if it's COVID related. And so I think we're struggling, similar to what Gail and Kevin mentioned as well, is that we don't know and you don't know exactly where you're going to be. So for those families that had an income loss that is unrelated to COVID, that's much easier to work with. And we're working with families on that. If tax returns haven't been filed yet, we are taking documentation that you have with W-2s or other things based on your family circumstances. We're having much more lengthy in-person conversations to help families through and to try to get as much information from families that might not be officially documented yet, and working as closely with you as we possibly can. For those families that are just recently affected, that's much more challenging, as I mentioned, because we just don't know where this is going. And you know, if you're looking at what the 2020 income situation might be compared to 2018 or 2019, you know, it's very hard to know. So in those cases, we have been able to help some families. And so I would encourage you to appeal if you need to. You might not get a definitive answer yet, depending on your circumstances. And that has varied greatly from families with very high income to families that were already quite low income. And so while COVID has had a significant impact in their situation, because they were on the lower income side of things to begin with, the change in income in terms of the financial aid formula isn't having as much of an impact. So those families were able to work with a little more closely right now because that change isn't going to impact the family contribution, for example. And so we can talk to you about what we might be able to offer with additional resources. In some cases, we've done some one-year awards, which is not typically what we do, but we've done like a one-year appeal grant that we'll revisit over time to see what does your situation look like in the next couple of years and evaluate it on an annual basis. We haven't done a lot of that, but there have been a couple of cases where we took that approach. So that was just something new for us that we wouldn't typically do.
So at Boston College, much like my colleagues here, we are entertaining appeals. So BC, I mean, I think this is the challenge for every parent and families. Every school is different and every school awards aid a little differently. Everybody has different policies with regards to funding and awards and timing, and some are private, some are public, some are 2 years, some are 4 years. So, you know, hopefully this information isn't overwhelming. BC is a 4-year private need-based with a healthy with healthy funding levels. So we're in a good position to help families right now, for now. But we are completely need-based. So we're looking for documentation. The federal government requires that we're using 2018 this year, which clearly doesn't work for most people now that 2020, they're furloughed, they're unemployed. Normally we would not entertain appeals this early in the season for someone that just lost their job or was self-employed, because it's really too hard to estimate and predict. But we are entertaining it now. So it's been a really significant challenge for families and the staff to get these estimates and to work with families to try and provide the documentation so we can all have the most accurate awards out there. We also will plan on looking at mid-year reviews. So for families, that would be the end of the calendar year. We'll reevaluate what actually happened in 2020 and we'll make adjustments at that point. We did not move our deadline. It is May 1st, which is this Friday. So we've really been inundated with families, which is scary and anxiety driven. And I think we're just trying to do our best to provide as much assistance with families that we don't have merit. There aren't, special awards. We reevaluate every year. So we're really just trying to manage the best we can right now with the resources we have. I would encourage families to talk to your financial aid counselor, describe the situation, give as much information as you can, because maybe we can figure something else out that you didn't think of. It doesn't hurt to have a conversation with your financial aid counselor.
And so, Melissa, you sort of addressed, and I'll ask everyone else this as well, because there are some questions coming in about how exactly do you appeal, the nitty gritty of how to start the process and go through it. And so you mentioned a couple of things like talking with your financial aid counselor, and then you mentioned documentation. So maybe each of you could just talk about how that process works at your schools.
So again, every school is going to be different, which is hard for families. We all were required to use 2018 information for the initial award, but at Boston College, when it comes to an income appeal, what we do is project current year. So we would be looking at current 2020 information, what's happening right now. And we would do so first. I would recommend people contact your financial aid counselor either in writing or by phone. We have an appeal form we would ask them to then fill out, providing projected figures. What have they earned up till now, and what do they project to earn or receive in income from now until the end of the year, when we would ask them to provide documentation to support those figures. So that's generally how we would do an income appeal. But of course, there are some, really unheard of situations happening right now. So, we're willing to adjust with each family situation, but every school is going to be doing this differently, I think.
And we're actually at Dean very similar to BC for a school that's very different from BC. Our process is pretty similar. We don't have special forms or anything like that. And boy, am I glad we don't, because the circumstances are, as Melissa just mentioned, so different and so varied. And so we are also looking at what the income situation is today. Versus 2018, if 2019 is helpful to show the family had a trend, that there was already a decline in income, then that's helpful information to have as well. And then to provide whatever documentation the family has, and that oftentimes comes through a conversation with the financial aid counselor. Our admissions counselors are helping as well, because there has been so many calls. So in our case, and probably at many colleges, you can speak to your admissions counselors as well. So again, because the circumstances are so different, then you really want to think about your documentation in terms of the changes that you've had. And so providing the support to show, what those changes are. The most difficult, as I think we sort of alluded to earlier, is for many families, the income changes have just happened within the past few weeks. So to anticipate where this is going is the most challenging part. And some of the appeals are easier to approve than others. Some are not. It's not a deny, but we're going to have to wait a little longer to see what happens over the next few months. And we're trying to settle in now on trying to come up with some very strong guidance on wait until X month to appeal on an income loss. We haven't quite settled on what that should be yet. And we hope to have that within the next few weeks. I know families need to make a decision, and you want to make a decision based on what you can afford. And so to ask you to wait until December so we have a full year is very challenging for families, and we absolutely understand that. And so we're trying to find a way to at least, June gets us at least halfway through the year, or sometime over the summer, we're at least further along, and trying to help families at that point if the change in income is very, very new and is specifically related to some kind of closure because of COVID and not something more permanent.
Thanks, Iris. And
Yeah.
Gail, or Kevin, yeah.
Gail can go. Go ahead, Gail.
We're similar. We try to meet families where they are. You're welcome to email. We do have a form on our website only because for some families it provides some structure to help think about how to put together the appeal. The most important thing is in the appeal is, of course, just giving us as many concrete figures as you can in terms of trying to quantify what is the financial impact happening with your family, creating an inability to put some funds toward higher education. It may also be helpful, I think, there's often a desire to kind of compare different school awards. As Melissa and others have said, there's so much variation in how schools are providing information. So the natural tendency is to say to Amherst, well, this other school provided this other award, why? And sometimes there's some really good reasons for that. So it's important to kind of understand what kind of aid you have. The difference, sometimes awards are merit-based, sometimes awards are need-based. And so if they're based on need, you want to if you're talking with a school, you want to make sure that you're also talking about a decision that's based on need, so that you're at least comparing some apples to apples. That gives us a little bit more to go on. And that's a little bit of advice.
And much like Gail, we do have a form at Salem State. It is the most basic form. It's more just to provide information as to what to include in the appeal. And it's also just to get the ball rolling. So the form's on our website, and it has tips such as, make sure that you include dates. So when did the separation from your employment start? How long is it projected? Did your employer say, we're going to be closed for 3 months? So it's more of just a guideline. So as soon as we get those, we review the situation, and then we reach out to the parent and student to get the further detail and request additional information.
Thank you. Someone is asking, and some of you addressed this a little bit, but I'll just ask it even a little more pointedly. Someone has an appeal letter into a college that has a May 1st deadline, and they have not heard a response. So they're just saying it's very difficult to make that decision and not have a revised financial aid offer or know whether they're going to or not. Any thoughts about that, the requirement to make the decision and have an appeal still out there? Yeah, thanks.
So I know, coming from a school that has a May 1st deadline, I would recommend that the family reach out to the school, either email or call. But I would also let them know that we are feverishly working night and day to get everything done by May 1st. And these lists are changing and growing, and adjustments are being made by the university. For instance, we've made an adjustment to our cost of attendance based on an orientation fee being reduced because it's going to be online versus in person. And so little things like that are happening, and that takes time to get through all that stuff. So the counselors are working really hard to get all of these awards done, so the family can have time to make a decision by May 1st. But I would absolutely recommend that family reach out to the school today.
I would echo Melissa. It is not uncommon for an admission office to grant an extension. So if you call the admission office and you say, I'm waiting on a financial aid appeal, they may want to verify that information. That's completely normal. But it provides them the ability to say, okay, they can chat with their colleagues and say, are we giving you an extension for 3 days, or are we giving you an extension for a week? Because they'll be able to hear from their colleagues, where that appeal is in their cycle. So absolutely call admission, absolutely ask for an extension, and they will give you the best answer they possibly can. But don't make a decision without having all the information you need. That's my advice. You deserve to have all of the best information.
And this is a little bit related, but another question also is someone who says, they're going to accept and deposit on May 1st with the information they have now, but there's anxiety because they don't know if there's a potential they may lose their job in the next 6 months. So just a reassurance that they can appeal at a later date. If their circumstances change at a later date, they're not bound because they accepted and deposited.
I would say absolutely. At whatever point in time the family is affected, then that's the time to appeal. What I always tell people, if you are uncertain now, as I think Gail was trying to say, make sure you get all the information you need before you make that commitment, because most schools, that deposit is still non-refundable. And I'll ask my colleagues who are all shaking their heads, so it sounds like still non-refundable. So $500 or $1,000 or whatever your deposit is still a significant amount of money. So make sure you have that. That said, if everything, you feel good right now and you're ready to make that deposit, then go ahead and make it. And should things change later, then you'll absolutely have the opportunity to appeal later at whatever point you have new information.
One of the changes that Amherst has made trying to be responsive to families during this time of uncertainty is we've actually waived our deposit amount for this year. But that comes with really a further attestation by families to really say, I'm only saying yes to one school. So we're trying to be not encourage people to say yes to more than one school, but also recognize that maybe making a deposit at this time is a financial barrier.
I do have a question. What if we deposit at more than one school? And I think in what you just said, you answered that, but does anyone want to say anything else about that?
You can deposit as many schools as you'd like to. I mean, as we said earlier, most schools, those deposits are non-refundable. I know Salem State, we actually reduced our deposit amount just to be mindful that people may be struggling financially. So we reduced our deposit to $100. And I'd also like to say, every school is different, but at Salem State, my financial aid administrators have the power and the authority to waive an enrollment deposit. So if your family's really facing a financial hardship and you need to ask to waive the deposit, it doesn't hurt to ask. I know, again, all institutions are different, but at Salem State, my staff have the ability and the authority to waive an enrollment deposit.
Boston College is similar. The financial aid administrators do not deal with the deposit, but admissions often will waive depending on the financial situation of the family. I think for those that double, triple deposit, I understand why families do it. It does pose a problem for schools later on in the summer when, we call it the melt, when all those kids that deposit rescind their enrollment or their acceptance. And then, and I think it takes away from kids that could have been let in, that weren't let in because someone took that spot. Again, I understand why students do it or applicants do it, but but it does have an impact on schools. You know, we bounce back and we have wait lists and transfers and all things to recover from it, but it does have a negative impact on schools when students double deposit.
Yeah, I would, and this has been, you know, the multiple deposits has been a growing issue for years. You know, never mind the situation that we're in right now. You know, colleges would ask you not to do that for all of the reasons Melissa just said. You know, we're expecting a certain enrollment. We're doing all of our planning as a result of that enrollment. And then to find out that you're not coming after we put a whole lot of time and put you in a room and a roommate and, you know, all of the things that are happening is expecting that you are coming. So that's one of the reasons that in our case, we have not even reduced the amount of the deposit because we feel that we need to have some assurance that you're serious about this. But that said, similar to what Kevin and Melissa were saying with a conversation with financial aid, then we will reduce, occasionally waive a deposit because of a financial hardship. So with us, it's more of it almost feels like an appeal process, even though it's really just a phone call. But we are taking that into consideration and doing the best we can to support families.
What I thought was a good question, as my daughter's in a similar position, is, you know, lots of students plan to work a lot over the summer to save up money to be able to pay some of those costs, especially those on-campus costs. And so many won't be able to do all those camp counselor jobs, and all of that is very much up in the air right now. So is that something you'd want to hear about, or are students coming to you telling you that their summer plans have now been canceled and that's a burden? And how should people handle that, and how will you handle that?
Well,
Yeah. Who wants to go first on this?
I know. I'll just jump in. We're definitely hearing it. We're definitely aware of it. All of our institutions, probably on some level, try to offer internships to students. So from our returning students, we are well aware of the landscape and the struggles. I think institutions broadly are trying to approach it the best they can. There are some institutions out there that have announced that they are able to replace the kind of the student contribution portion of a financial aid assessment and eligibility with grant for this coming year. But that is not universal. It will absolutely depend on an institution's health and wealth. So you can ask the question. I think it's probably a little bit early. There may be more institutions that over time are able to make adjustments to their packaging to accommodate those kinds of depressed student earning situations. But some institutions will not be able to do that. So you can ask, but that's where, you know, loans and other kind of financing may also come into play.
What Gail said.
And there's a question about who should send an appeal. Should it be the student? There are a few questions like this. Should it be the student? Should it be the parent? Some counselors are with us today asking, should I make the appeal for the student? And then there's a question about if you receive 3 letters for the same student, will that help? So maybe just talk about that a little bit.
Don't send 3, 1 is enough.
Yeah. I think it definitely depends on the type of school and the kind of aid you're receiving. You know, at a need-based school where they're determining eligibility for financial aid based on a formula, the appeal should come from the parent or the family, and it should contain tangible, you know, documentable information that we can actually adjust data figures for. Financial aid, I mean, guidance counselors, you know, letters of recommendation, unfortunately, it doesn't sway the decision on, you know, whether we can decrease income in our financial aid analysis or not. The other piece that I would mention is we completely understand what an emotional process this is. Some of us have had children in college ourselves, and it's people's money, and it's a quite expensive investment. So I get the level of emotion that's involved in it, but unfortunately, at least at Boston College, because we're need-based, we can't react to the emotional appeal. We can't react to the anecdote, to the story, to the anxiety, to what might happen 6 months from now. It actually has to be something that we can tangibly document and change within an analysis. So all of that information should come directly from the family, you know, with documentation included.
Agreed. Actually, I have nothing to add to that.
Yeah.
And I would say we get the question a lot, you know, is it important that it comes from the student specifically? And will you look more favorably because it's the student asking for assistance rather than the parent? I'm going to keep counselors out of this for now, because basically just ditto on Melissa on that. But, you know, even when the communication comes from the student, if the issue is really based on the family circumstances, the parents have been very involved with that letter or that communication. We know that. That's fine. It's your information, and it's perfectly fine for the parent to communicate the information rather than the student. That's just fine. We know that. We expect it. My hunch is all four of us would agree on that. And that's just fine. To Melissa's point, unless the counselor has some specific information about the financial circumstances of the family that could be documented, I don't know how much counselors, other than supporting the student and the family and helping them through the process, I'm not sure hearing directly from counselors is necessarily beneficial.
One thing I would add is at Salem State, and I'm sure equally across other universities and institutions, include the student. So if you're the parent and you're submitting the appeal, please include the student, because at Salem State, some of the information that we're requesting will actually be on the student portal on a to-do list. So the student needs to be involved and engaged and know part of the process as well.
Yep.
The communication will most likely be going back and forth with the student through the portal. So definitely include your student with any appeals that you may file.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Kevin. The communications are going to students, so it's important that they know that they should be paying attention to something, even if they don't understand all the details of what's happening, to know that there is an appeal in process, that we've requested something, that if they get a communication from the college that they respond to it, it's never been more important to read your email. You know, we know students don't love reading emails, but it's important that they're keeping up with their email and portals and all of the ways that colleges are communicating.
Thank you. There is a question, and I'm not sure if you'll even be able to answer this, but maybe you could address it just in general about how someone would go about having this conversation with your school. The questions, a few of them ask about if we are too uncertain about the finances right now to make a decision and we defer, does the financial aid that we received hold for the next year? So if you want to answer that, great, or at least maybe explain a little bit about how someone would go about having that conversation at your institution.
I can answer because it's very simple at Dean. So I'll be very quick because it's very simple. If you pay an enrollment deposit and defer, you are guaranteed a spot and you are guaranteed the same level of financial aid. And if our financial aid changes in the next year and it increases, you will receive the increased aid. So for example, we do have merit scholarships in addition to need-based aid. So if your student would have been eligible for a higher scholarship, if our model changes, you will get the higher scholarship. So it's very simple with Dean. If you pay your deposit, you're guaranteed your spot and your money.
I'm glad Dean's being optimistic about their ability to fund people at an increased level in the future. That's great, Iris. I will just add that I have a little bit different take in this climate on deferrals. I think that you need to be very, very thoughtful about the deferrals, and you need to pay very close attention to what the institutions are communicating. There is a fear that there will be too many students asking for deferrals. So there may be time periods that you need to ask for the deferral, or the institution may not be able to accommodate it, and they may not be able to accommodate high volume. At Amherst, we only have need-based aid. So in terms of a deferral to the next academic year, a student would need to reapply with current financial information to be considered for need-based financial aid. But within this academic year, if a deferral is for a semester, which I'm not sure we would typically do, but within the academic year, we would certainly keep the need-based aid, but anything in the future would require a reapplication.
And to piggyback on Gail, at Salem State, it's similar. Every incoming student will receive a portion of Salem State funds. Those are guaranteed year to year. We cannot guarantee any state funding because we don't know what our levels will be each year. So, but at least your initial award of Salem State funds would be guaranteed if you deferred for a year.
And I should clarify, I was talking about Dean College funds as well. The federal funding and state funding varies year to year based on your FAFSA and funding at the school. So I'm talking about, for us, the majority of the money that students are getting are in their merit scholarship, and that we can guarantee year to year.
I was just going to jump back in real quickly. In terms of reapplying for the next year, because next year, the 21-22 academic year will be based on 2019 income, you should have a sense of actually how that compares to your 18 anyway already. So if your circumstances are the same, you should generally expect it to be a similar award. If your circumstances are different, you certainly could have a conversation with a financial aid person about how to interpret that.
Boston College is very, very similar to Amherst. So we're need-based and we reevaluate every year. And so there's no guarantee, but we also, I'm sure like Amherst, try to be as consistent as possible each year with the financial aid package. It really, if there's any change, it's based on change in your information, not the school doing it differently. So
it's 12:57, but I'm going to ask one more question, and that is, we've talked a lot about changes in income because that seems to be on a lot of people's minds with job loss, potential job loss. But this question is about, I've had a large loss in my 529 fund. So is that a reason for appeal, and how would you handle that?
So I'll bite. So this is, kind of, I don't want to say controversial because it's not, but we realize everybody's assets have taken a hit, as well as the school's assets. But there's pretty, there's a lot of federal regulation around whether we change assets or not mid-year. And there's some pretty strong guidelines around not doing that mid-year. So Boston College is choosing to not look at appeals based on changes in assets at this point. You do reapply each year. You do have the opportunity to make that up or to report that different value next year. That doesn't mean we won't entertain other things within the analysis if we can to help the family out if they're really in a tough spot, but that would be based on an individual conversation and looking at that individual analysis to see if there's any kind of wiggle room anywhere else. But right at this moment, we are not granting appeals based on changes in assets.
Okay.
I'll say the same, but I guess I also just want to point out to families that because the need analysis formula recognizes that assets fluctuate and it recognizes that assets are sometimes not that liquid, there is a very small percentage that the assets generate as a direct portion of the contribution. And because of that, it really takes a very dramatic change in assets to make an even modest change in the contribution. So I think that mitigates the impact sometimes.
Right.
So I think we'll begin to close here. I'll let you each say a few last things, but as we're closing, I guess I just want to say thank you all very much, because I think sometimes the idea of going to the financial aid office on a campus and sharing very personal information and sharing your anxieties and fears, and it can be very scary. And all of you, I think, show that you are, very real people working very hard to help your students, and having your own issues in this crisis. And so I think we really, I hope people take from this that they should absolutely speak up, have communication with all of you, and that this is an evolving process and everyone's in it together, and it's going to be that way for some time moving forward. Let me say one thing about MIFA before I let you say. We also at MIFA are here for you. And again, I want to say, please call us or email us with any questions that you have. We tried to cover so many of your questions today, but there are a lot of you on the phone, so I don't know that we got to every question. But we can answer these, and we'll be answering these in future content that we're putting out on our website. Also, if you'd like to have a one-on-one appointment request with someone from the college planning team at MIFA, you can do that here on our website. And tomorrow evening at 6 p.m., we are going to do a similar webinar on financial aid appeals, just to make sure that everyone can hear all of this really great content. So with that, I would just ask, do all of you have any closing comments? I'll share that the type of information that the other comments that I was receiving from people are just with the fear of what is going to happen for the fall. What if my student isn't on campus? What if, all the what ifs? That's exactly what the other questions I've seen are about. And I know you can't answer those, but if you have any final comments about just how you are working through those things on your campus, I think that would be helpful to share with families, and then we'll close down this webinar.
I'll jump in because we talk about this every day. It is the hardest conversations we're having. I think everyone is hopeful that we will be open, we'll be on campus, that life will return to whatever the new normal is, but that it will look similar to life in 2019. So that's the goal. And to help you manage the finances, our goal is for you to be able to enroll at our institutions. And so we want to work closely with you to do our best to help you make that happen. And I think for now, because as we mentioned earlier in this webinar, things are changing so quickly, and day to day, sometimes hour to hour. The briefings, we're all, huddled around these briefings to see what's the latest. So it's very hard to anticipate. I think every campus is looking at contingency planning on what if. I know at Dean, we have about 4 different plans, from we open like we normally would to we're online 100%. And we really hope that's not what happens. That's worst case scenario. And then a couple things in between based on social distancing guidelines and how many students can be in a residence hall room, and how many people can be in a classroom. For us, being a very small institution is actually being quite helpful. We don't have quite as many students to move around as BC would need to deal with, for example. So depending on the institution, the challenge is very different. But rest assured, from boards and presidents on down, we're all trying to figure this out and keep up with all of the things coming out of Washington, coming out of the governor's office, coming out of the Department of Higher Eds, and just trying to keep up with it all. And at the end of the day, helping all of our families enroll and feel good about it.
Thank you.
I don't know if any of us can add any more to Iris, so I'll just say, you know, we're all in this same boat together. So we all recognize that this is not the way your children plan to enter college. It's not the way my child planned to enter college. But we have no choice. This is what we're going to do. And I think what we all hope is that there's a lot of great creativity that comes out of it. The best part of education is hopefully yet to come.
Thank you.
I would just add that we we want you to attend our university in the fall as normal. We want what you want. And so the universities are going to do whatever they can to make that happen. But it's a moving target at this point. So be patient, please.
Thank you all.
I can't do much better than my three non-colleagues, but basically please be patient with us. We are dealing with changes every single day coming in from many different places. There's a lot of stuff that we're juggling up in the air. So be patient with us. I always like to say I have one of the best jobs in the world is help students achieve their goals. And that's what we want to do is help you to achieve your goals and realize your dreams. So we're going to work with you and it doesn't ask.
Thank you all so much. And thank you all for joining us. And we wish you the best and stay in touch so we can all help you in this process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.